So here's our agenda for this evening. Before I turn it over to our esteemed partners here, we'll be talking about the Big Five immediate action response protocols, our district emergency response plan, how we handle evacuations, school closures, what decisions or checklists that we use to make those very important decisions, what we do when there's a fast approaching fire in terms of shelter in place. We also have protocols at both schools for our students to be released in a controlled way. And like I said, the decision checklist for school closure, a lot of thought goes into, do we close school? Do we cancel? Do we end school early? We've done quite a bit here in the district to mitigate risk for wildfire, so we'll talk about that. And the most important, I think, topic in regards to any emergency is communication and situational awareness. So we have some resources to share on that, and then throwing in some little bit of information about poor air quality and high heat guidance from the County Office of Education Big Five protocols. So at this time, I will just talk a little bit about in our school district and all the schools in the county, we follow the Big Five emergency protocols. How many of you have heard of Big Five? Great. If you haven't, I recommend that you click on this link, the Big Five community packet. And it's also, this is a live link. When you get this presentation, you can have it and click on it. But also you can go to the SMCOE website and check out Big Five. And that community packet is awesome because it tells you what you can do at home to prepare or to respond to any of these types of emergencies. So these are the 5 main actions that correspond with different emergencies. Tonight we'll be focusing really on evacuation, which is what we do when we have a fire drill, or if there were to be an actual fire, of course, we evacuate the buildings or off-site so that everyone is safe. But essentially, the actions are shelter in place if there's an environmental issue, such as a swarm of wild bees out there or something. We would go into shelter in place and learning continues. And then we had the great shakeout last week with the earthquake drill. So that's drop, cover, and hold on. Secure campus is when there's a potential threat or danger in the community. And it's the preliminary step ramping up to lockdown and barricade when there's an immediate threat or danger, like an intruder on campus. But like I said, tonight we'll really talk about evacuation when there's a possible wildfire approaching. And by the way, we'll take questions when we get to the orange slides. We have this chunked out into different sections. So if you have any clarifying questions or comments or anything you want to share, please don't hesitate. But we'll kind of go through each section of this presentation. In the district, we have developed an emergency response plan. It's an internal document that has all of our procedures and protocols, policies for what we do in the event of an emergency that covers, has our maps, our campus maps, for example, our decision trees when we decide to close school, our evacuation plans, shelter in place procedures. I just put this here so that people know that we have a really comprehensive plan that we as staff take very seriously, and it's constantly iterative based on the changing recommendations. At this time, I wanted to introduce, we have Kim Giuliacci and Selena from the Woodside Fire Protection District. And I just love working with both of these people because they do so much to support our district. Last year, you did the, what was that? Yes, thank you. I was like, what is the word for that? Fire extinguisher training for all of our staff, and it was fun, and we learned a lot, and I was so proud that we got that done last year. So, and then the orange bag training. So
you're doing CPR this year.
CPR. So we're learning so much, and we really value that partnership. So thank you so much. And this is the second year that you're doing this presentation with us. So thank you, Kim, for being here as well.
Good evening, everyone. And for those of you at home who cannot see me,
I also wanted to introduce some other members of my prevention team. One of our fire inspectors, David Peroni, is here, as well as Dan Dempsey, who is our fuel mitigation engineer. And he is what leads all the egress routes and hazardous removal around the whole town. And on town property, they clear out the egress routes and town right-of-ways. So he is a very integral part of our district and making our district safe. And then David, you'll be meeting him and Michael as they come around when we actually do your home assessments in the town of Portola Valley, because that's one of the things they'll be doing throughout the district. So the slide that you have up actually comes at a good time only because we had something similar already come through last weekend with the red flag warnings and having an understanding of what that means. I'm not going to go into detail of all these different things. This is just a slide so people start to get familiar on what all these different levels are. And these levels get called out by the national, well, when you get to the red flag warning especially, it is from the National Weather Service is where we take that lead from. And we, through monitoring, it's a constant monitoring that we do watching the weather to see what different level or what's going to be required out of residents so that it can be communicated to staff and parents. So we are in constant communication. For example, the last one that just happened with the red flag warning, Roberta and I were in constant conversation of what type of actions the school needed to take if it was something serious enough where we need to close down the schools. And of course, when we think about closing down the schools, it's something that we have to take very seriously because it is a big decision and it's a very major impact. So we decided that maybe right now would just be a monitoring. Let's see how it goes day by day. As we saw, thankfully, it wasn't as bad as what the National Weather Service was predicting. So thankfully, it was fine. But nonetheless, it's still always good practice to have all our communications open and talking about what we're going to do if we needed to take any action with any of the schools, whether we need to evacuate the schools, close it down completely and not even have the kids come to school. So there is a lot of conversations that the district has with the school district. Okay, the terminology. So it's really important to understand the differences in evacuation. So if there was a wildfire and it was affecting, let's just say it was happening down at PD Ranch area. And we're looking at wind conditions, weather patterns, how large it's getting. Well, this community coming over here may be on evacuation warning because we're looking at how the fire is actually moving. And if that becomes the case, then it would get communicated through different channels, which we'll get into these slides later of how that would happen. But just so you understand, it means you need to start preparing to evacuate. Now, something important that when there is an evacuation order, if it gets to that point, for example, the residents and the PV Ranch and everywhere there, they would be on evacuation order, is because we're so limited with our roads and getting in and out, it's really important that if you're in warning, you should be preparing yourself to get ready to leave, but don't take that as an action to leave unless you are like people who have horses and where you have livestock that you need to start preparing sooner and getting out. And the reason I say to wait a little bit is because we really don't need to add more traffic to those who are absolutely under evacuation order. They need to be evacuating right now. They have to get out. And by having people who are in other areas that are not under evacuation order and just under warning, we're going to bog down the streets and it's going to back their ability to get out. So these are things that would be communicated. That's why we want to keep doing education. It's really important to understand what your zone is, and we'll go over that later as well. But it's just to understand what these two distinctions are. Okay, what is red flag warning? As I stated before, it's something that the National Weather, they're the ones who make this prediction. They're the ones who put counties or different areas of the state under a red flag warning. We're checking alerts. So we're constantly getting alerts and checking our weather service to see if we are in a state of red flag. This last weekend, it was specifically all of San Mateo County. They give wind patterns that they're seeing, and it wasn't, the last red flag warning was actually not because of the heat. It was because of the low humidity levels and the winds that they were predicting. So because of that, it put us into red flag warning. But it's important to know what that means. I'll let you, anything that goes on with weather, it's an important tool for everyone to get used to. Our website, if you go to our website, we have a lot of information, especially when it was red flag. As soon as you landed on our website, it would give you all the information about red flag warning, how long it was going to last, what did that mean for you, what action do you need to take. And there was a whole list of information that directed you exactly to a link so that residents were aware of what am I supposed to do during this time. So anytime anything severe, things are coming, please go to our website. We're very active in keeping information up to date. If you're not on any of our social media, at least our website would provide a lot of this information, and it would detail exactly what red flag is and what that means to you in a detailed version. It would be too much to put on a slide, but just be aware that that information is available.
So if there was a red flag warning and in collaboration with law enforcement and also with the Woodside Fire Protection District, we might evaluate a situation and say, okay, we need to have a voluntary evacuation or an unplanned controlled dismissal, early dismissal of our students and staff. And like I said, we'll talk more about what decisions go, the checklist that goes into making that decision. But this is really dependent on the context and the circumstances. Because that's one of the things that Kim and I were talking about. Should we have school, but then have an early dismissal? And as conditions change, we might make a decision to do that, and we would notify parents via Parent Square, which are the urgent alert, which is the way we communicate with parents in and not even during non-emergency times. And then we may decide also to close the school altogether or not open it at all, depending on what the conditions are. And again, the decision is made in close collaboration with the Woodside Fire Protection District and the sheriffs. We really are trying to balance that safety and wanting to keep schools open because that's what we're in the business to do. And there are a lot of, it's a trade-off, and we really weigh risks and balance the timely communication if we do decide to close school with, having the most current information so we don't close schools prematurely. So it's tough. I have to say, Kim and I were having a lot of conversations. I was talking with our school board, and it's a big decision to make. But I want to say again, feel really supported by the Woodside Fire Protection District.
And just to piggyback a little bit, it was 3 a.m. the day that red flag warning was starting. And I was emailing Roberta at that point because it was still, maybe the winds are getting really bad because they were really bad over the night. But then come the morning, and then it was like, well, you know what? It's really calm this morning. Let's just wait and see what happens. So it was like an ongoing thing of just monitoring what decision we need to make, because again, we're weighing out those risks, and we don't want to prematurely make a decision that may not end up being what it was supposed to be. So it is tough. It's tough going back and forth. The shelter in place. I know this is really hard. I'm a parent. I have 2 kids. And it's a reality that is something, as a parent, it's the last thing you want to do if there was a wildfire, to be separated from your kids. But I'll tell you that with studies and what we've seen from wildfires that have happened in the state, sometimes that option of sheltering in place is a better option than evacuating students if the fire front's coming really fast, and it's faster than we can get bodies moved and parents and everything put together to get here to get kids out. Thankfully, the school district, they have done a lot of work and have spent a lot of money on hardening structures and creating their defensible space, because so in the fire service, we call anything that may require additional support from us, we call it a target hazard, because we know it's a place where people are. So being a school, this would be considered a target hazard. And if something actually did happen where we knew the school was going to have to shelter in place, It would be one of the first locations that our resources would be dedicated to do what we call structure protection and to defend the building and the surrounding area if it came to that point. But we have seen fires overcome people on roads and in vehicles, and being in a structure that is as hardened and defendable like the schools are, it's a much safer place for your kids to be in than for you to try to come and get your kids. Lots of traffic. It would just create major chaos already on roads that have limitations. So it's the last resort of an option that ever gets made. A lot of decision, a lot of risk weighing, a lot of discussion happens with these, but it's still to know that this is an option when we have to make one. And again, this is the time when we have to keep reassuring parents that they're safer where they are. And we wouldn't make that decision lightly, because we know these are your treasures and they're the most important things in your life. And we know that as parents as well. And that's why all our resources would be dedicating time to making sure that those areas are protected if we do have a shelter in place type of situation.
And I would just add to that, specifically the buildings where we would shelter in place at each school would be the MUR, multi-use room. So that room, that big room right over there, it's also the gym where there's a book fair there. You might want to stop by there later too. So the MUR here, as well as the MUR at Corte Madera, are the two places where we would shelter in place in that very severe scenario. Next, we'll talk about transportation and offsite evacuation. It's highly unlikely that we will have transportation options for students and staff to evacuate if we have students and staff on campus and need to evacuate, because it's, like Kim said, the roads already have limitations. The ingress and egress are very limited into both of our school sites. And the transportation capacity in this area, as you probably know, isn't stellar. So we really would struggle with having buses take our students and staff off campus and then actually be able to use the roads. But it really is something that we continue to talk about with our emergency partners. And in the event that we would be offered buses and that we would have time to evacuate, then that's something that we're prepared to do as well. I'll talk briefly about the student release process. How many of you are parents in the district? Great. So for those of you who are parents in the district, I just wanted to say that we have an on-site student release protocol and an off-site student release protocol. And both of these are dependent on the collaboration that we have with the Woodside Fire Protection District and the circumstances. Sometimes, if there are incidents that are small enough and we need to evacuate, but we don't need to relocate, we would have an on-site student release, which we practice at both schools every year. And then if there were a situation where we needed to get off-site because of a dangerous situation, then we're prepared to go to an off-site location, for which we have several areas that we're in contact with and memorandums of understanding for going to those offsite locations that are away from the danger, and then releasing students to parents in a controlled way offsite. What's important for you to know is that in either of these situations, parents would be notified via our Parent Square Urgent Alert, which every parent gets either a text, a phone call, voicemail, or an email, or all of the above, stating that we are going to be evacuating and have student release process. And then the person picking up the student needs to be listed on the emergency contact information. And also the person who's picking up may not pick up other students, you can't pick up the neighbor or anybody else unless that person is listed on the emergency contact form. And then people must have a valid ID to verify their identity. And then we really ask that everyone brings ample patience, understanding, and cooperation in the event that we are initiating a student release process. So the process may look something like this. I won't get into too many of these details because each school has a specific process for student release, either offsite or onsite. But essentially, the family parks, checks in, waits, and then the students are over here, and then there's a checklist, and then the student is brought to the family, and they're reunified, and then they go and live happily ever after. So it's something like that. But again, each school site has their own process, so the principals will communicate that. We wanted to put this up here again because it really is the guidance table, a high-level overview of sort of the progression of wildfire activity and what it looks like, and sort of a definition, and what we would do in the district if students are not on campus or if they are on campus, and then what our communication is in each of these scenarios.
I think Roberta, the school district, has really put together, until my first presentation, I'd never seen this type of table set up. And in reviewing it, it really does give you a really nice summary and breakdown of each of the levels for the school and their actions of what they'll be doing and how things get communicated with parents. So I think it's very important, and the fact that they have so many different ways of communicating to parents to utilize this, that this would be a table that is definitely necessary for parents to be really well aware of what each one means, so that when it does come through and they say, okay, we're in a level 2 or we're in a level 3 evacuation warning, you already are prepared mentally of what that actually means. So if anything, this might be a chart to always keep with you, or, you know, have it as a photo on your phone or what have you, because I believe you also have an app, don't you, that has all your emergency procedure?
No, we have a Google Doc
The Google
that you
Doc.
can look at on your phone.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll show you where that is at the end.
Yeah,
or
and
toward
that
the
has
end.
that in there,
And it's
yeah.
in that document is in there. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to pause right now and see if you have any questions before we talk about the decision tree support. Yeah.
Hard copy is there.
Yes.
A hard copy?
Yeah, to give to us.
I don't. I'm planning on sending it out on PV Forum, sending it to parents and guardians in the community. I can make a hard copy if you want. How many people want a hard copy of the presentation? Okay.
You will be sending an electronic copy.
Electronic, yeah.
Right.
I'll send out
I
an
think-
electronic copy.
Yeah, we'd be very young, used to had printed out poster-sized versions. And
Awesome.
a few of them. I think one of the most effective things could be to put this in a like a mobile or web-friendly form on your website, because it's such an important document, and to be able to see it and make perhaps the overview plus being able to click into the different levels.
So to that, I'll show you where that is on our website, and that document, emergency information for parents, I think really is meant to be like one-stop shopping for every emergency that we are anticipating or planning for. Is there a
Valerie's
question?
there. Valerie's there. She might need to unmute herself. So Valerie has a
Okay. Hi,
question.
Valerie.
She has her speaker.
Valerie, do you want to unmute? Oh, there she is. Yeah.
Yes, could you please share your slides full screen for us at home? It's up in the corner and we can't read them.
That's her view.
Yeah.
Okay, we're thinking it might be your view of how you have it set up.
She has to pin it.
You have to pin the presentation.
Do what?
Pin
It's
it.
gonna be hard for her.
Um,
She's gonna have to go to the little.
The little thumbtack.
Oh, I got it. I got it. Thank you. Yes.
yes.
Success. Great.
I'm so happy. Okay, any other questions in the room or on the screen? Or at home, I mean? All right, I'll keep going. So this is a decision support tree that we designed in our district that I love flowcharts. Like my brain works like a flowchart. So essentially, like when we had the red flag warning last week, I pulled this out and I said, okay, is there a red flag warning issued? Yes. Is there an active wildfire nearby? Thank God, no. And then are there students on campus? So then it depends, right? Because it was Thursday and then Friday. So if there were students on campus, and that was the case on Thursday and Friday, then okay, remain in session, call Woodside Fire, make preparations for controlled early dismissal, and maintain situational awareness. And that is all I did for 2 days because it's critical, right? And so it was a great opportunity for us to get all our ducks in a row and practice and make sure that we're ready to roll. But let's say there's a red flag warning issued, yes. Is there an active nearby wildfire? Yes, let's say there was. Then, are there students on campus? If yes, then has an official evacuation order been issued? Let's say there was, and we have to evacuate. Then call 911 and then communicate the plan to shelter in place or evacuate, depending on the situation. And then the question is, do we shelter in place or evacuate? Again, it's all situational. And then our situation so severe that evacuation would put staff and students at greater risk? If the answer is yes, then we follow the shelter in place, the mandatory shelter in place protocols. So that's a very worst case scenario.
So, and as Roberta is pointing out, I mean, I also agreed. I like flow charts because it just makes it very simple on an action and a decision that gets made. You know, if it's a yes, you follow one path. If it's no. And again, this is just it's a plan to have in place, but things change so much. There's so many variables that we can't always account for because there's just so many different scenarios that can come up. But I think this really depicts a really way of simplifying any situation, whatever the variable may be, that you still have a course of action no matter what. So I know for us as a district, the fact that we are already in constant communication anyway, but then Roberta can give us the status. Yes, I have some students and you know, still on campus. Like, let's say it was, you know, after 3, but you've got after school care or what have you. So there are some students still here. What are we going to do for those students? So there is constant communication between us. A lot of times the call 911, the reason for that is to really get everything activated. But that is also something the fire district can do too. If we're already in communication, we can already ourselves internally activate the emergency response system that'll start calling all the resources that need to come in place. But this is a great way for parents just to have an idea of what the pathway would be.
Thank you. And then internally, as superintendent and along with my team, here's how we think about the decision to close schools or to close early or to not open schools if there is a red flag warning. We think about these types of ideas or thoughts like a checklist. Also, if there's a power outage or any other unusual circumstance. And again, in collaboration with the sheriff and the fire department. So we think about safety. Is there access to the school site? Do we have the ability to evacuate? Do we have adequate supervision? What about temperature and lights? And is there natural light? We have lanterns and, you know, other ways of ensuring that learning will continue even if there's no power. And then ways to communicate. So we have two-way radios and we might not have electricity, but we're still able to communicate. We also think about health. Is there water that we can, you know, have for drinking and flushing toilets? What about ventilation? If that's a concern, again, temperature and toilets. We also, last week when there was the red flag warning, I said to teachers, okay, be ready for non-tech teaching and learning and have your lessons ready to roll. And they have that ready to go in terms of like, if we don't have power, we anticipate power outages because you never know when there's going to be a power outage, but teaching and learning continues. And then equity considerations. Some families have limited financial resources, so they might not have options for childcare. And also working parents are really disproportionately affected if school is closed. So we think about all these things when we're making the decision to close schools or not. And most importantly, again, is communication, monitoring communications from the County Office of Education and from all of our emergency partners. Again, I can't say this enough. It's like wanting to provide information to parents and guardians about what the plan is, but also not wanting to act prematurely and prematurely cancel school. And then planning to communicate with all of our stakeholders, our parents, guardians, and staff about the situation, and then encouraging families to have contingency plans if we indeed need to cancel or close schools. So
Are there, I guess they're not emergency generators. at
we
school?
do not have emergency generators, no. We looked into them a few years ago. They were costly. And then we figured that we don't have a need and we wouldn't be able to have generated power for the whole school anyway. So, we might continue to look into just having power generators for our offices. But right now we do have some battery backups for, charging cell phones and other types of communication devices. But we don't have battery or emergency backups. I'm really proud of the work that we've done to mitigate risk here in the district. And Kim touched on some of this. Our buildings are modernized and have non-combustible materials. Our ventilation systems have screen meshes so that embers cannot go into the ventilation system. And then we can actually close the vents remotely if needed to prevent outside air from going in. Our roofing is rated according to these organizations adequately so that they are also non-combustible. And you notice we have beautiful new buildings as well as the existing buildings. The new buildings also have fire-resistant siding that's non-combustible roofs, gutters, attic vents, and the glass is tempered. So these are all really, for me, reassuring. Although they weren't intended to be maintained as shelters in place, they're designed to resist ignition as the code requires. And we also have created defensible space around all of our campuses. We hired an arborist at both schools to do an assessment of all the trees, and we actually cut down, removed several trees at both schools that were high risk. And then we have pruned many trees on both schools according to the recommendations of the arborist, who's awesome. And it's really important to keep doing that. So we have this on the calendar for annual maintenance and update or removal and pruning of trees that are high risk. And I want to thank our custodians and Travis DeFreitas, our maintenance person, for all of their hard work in ensuring that our campuses we're doing everything we can to reduce the risk of wildfire. And with that, I'll turn it over to Selena Brown, your favorite topic.
So what we have on the screen here are just various opportunities for you to get information. You have personal responsibility to maintain awareness, right? And so we want to be proactive in providing the information and links for you. So if you have access to this presentation, all of these are live links. So on here, we have obviously our fire district website. We have the WPD Ready website. That's our local preparedness program. So if you've never heard of it and you want to get involved in local disaster preparedness, that would be your one-stop shop there. In addition to that, SMC Alert, hopefully everybody here has been signed up for SMC Alert. That's our primary notification system. And we'll go into it a little bit further in another slide. We also have County OES, which is now the Department of Emergency Management. So you may see San Mateo County DEM as the new OES. And then this is a really great link here, the ready.org. That's actually through FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And they have a ton of lists on there for various disasters, whether it's wildland, flooding, severe winter weather. We actually direct a lot of people to that website as well. And we use a lot of their information on our website. Also, too, I want to make a note about the Portola Valley AM radio. So I don't know if you guys are aware of the AM radio station or have ever just tuned to it, but it's a really great way to get information. For the red flag warning, we changed the message to actually let you guys know about the red flag warning. And it's a pre-recorded message. So it's just a looped message on there that will play over and over. And so we're hoping to utilize that a little bit more since we had issues with the antenna, and we got it working again. So be aware if you have an emergency radio, which I hope all of you should and do have, to tune into 1680 or in your vehicle. Unless I think it's a Tesla, they don't have them on as well. So this is just some of the few resources that you can get information about situational awareness. Like I said, on our fire district, the homepage, we update that constantly. We also put up an emergency banner at the very top if something very urgent comes up. So just know that you can go to various sites on here and get whatever you need. And if you have any tips, just like the idea to put the guidance table up on the website, please give it to us. We want to know what you want, what information you want, and what you're looking for, and if these sites are really working for you.
This is yours also.
Okay, so here we go. SMC alerts in Genesis. Again, hopefully you're signed up for SMC Alert, but what was formerly known as Zone Haven is what we call Genesis. And the way they work together is Genesis is an evacuation platform. And so Genesis will show zones on here. So it's important for you to know what zone you're in. What's really great is Genesis has an app. So you put it on your phone and then you can pre-populate where you want notifications from, and you can receive notifications. So then if we issue an evacuation, what'll happen is you'll get an SMC alert if you're signed up for SMC Alert, and we'll say what zone we're evacuating, which will be a Genesis zone. If you have no idea what zone you live in, you can go to their website, just punch in your address, and it'll tell you exactly where you're at on there. So these two work together. So it's important that you're actually signed up or are aware of both platforms.
Before you change it, I highly suggest the Genesis Protect app. In talking with the county, with San Mateo County Department of Emergency Management, they have said that with Genesis Protect, that notification comes in a lot quicker than if you were to log in online to Genesis Protect because the notification's already turned on. As a side note, as much as we want you to utilize these things because these are great for information and constant updating, but there is also another system that gets used and only the Department of Emergency Management has the access to do this. So this would be in conjunction with Woodside Fire, giving them notification that we needed this done. But there is another system, like you get the Amber Alert, when there's a child missing and you get that loud ping on your phone and everybody in the room gets it. Similar to that, it's the same system that would put out an evacuation order. So that is an opt-out system. And most people don't even know they have it, but you do. It's how you get the Amber Alerts. And it's only would be used at that time. They will geo-fence the area of where we're evacuating, which is why the zones become important for our usage as well, because we'll name what zones are under evacuation order. And then that would go out as that kind of tone. So let's say you are driving in from San Jose, let's say, but you don't know that you're in evacuation, hypothetical. As soon as you cross, there's a geo-fence line that gets created. As soon as you pass it, your phones are going to tone off because you're hitting that boundary where it's been set that your area is under evacuation. So it gives you time to not enter the area anymore and to turn around and basically get out of the area. So I just want to make that notation because that's something a lot of people don't know about.
Yeah, it's through, it's called WIA, so Wireless Emergency Alerts, right? So if you ever hear that, then you know what happens when your phone comes up. It's all beep. Yeah.
I did not know that. Thank you for teaching us that. That's awesome. And in the district, how we communicate and maintain situational awareness internally is, of course, we have a PA system. We have a fire alarm system that's very sophisticated and can do all calls, but we need electricity for that. We have very good two-way radios or walkie-talkies for each classroom that we use constantly for communication. And then we also have a landline telephone, good old-fashioned landline telephone. If we need to call out, we have a way to do that, or for parents to call in if needed, if we didn't have another, because our phone system actually depends on electricity. So we would need a landline in order to use the phone. And then externally from the district to parents and guardians, like I've said, we are communicating via Parent Square. It's important that parents put in the right information into Power School because that feeds into Parent Square. So That's super important. We just did a test of that system a couple weeks ago, and it was fascinating to see the data, how many people got it, how many of those didn't work. And so we're working with those families to make sure that they're getting the communication. And then here are some other ways that we communicate externally with parents. And then earlier we talked about the information that's on our website. This is a live link to our school safety plan and parent emergency information, which looks like this. And then here's an updated QR code that I made red today. And so this is on our website at the bottom, and it's meant for parents and the community to look at in an emergency, and it's constantly being revised and iterated as information changes. If that doesn't work, let me know, because I did a test on it and it did work. But this is the safety information for parents. And then just quickly, we also have poor air quality protocols according to the San Mateo County Office of Education guidelines. And so remember earlier I talked about the shelter in place. If there are environmental hazards, like I use the bees as an example, swarm of bees, it's also, we also go into shelter in place if there's poor air quality. And that means that we have, based on the air quality, a progression of activities that are limited according to the different air quality. I know there's a lot of text on this page, but going to this slide is, I think, easier to see. Okay, so for example, if the air quality was level 5, which is, whoops, I have to go to this thing here, like above 300, then we would have no outdoor activities. All activities would be moved indoors. And then we also have a way to close our vents so that outside air doesn't come in. So we would activate that system, but we're really cognizant of the air quality all the time because we want to make sure that, especially for students and even staff who have upper respiratory issues, we want to make sure that they're safe, and we're ensuring their activity is on par with what it should be based on air quality. And then new this year is a high heat guidance chart from the County Office of Education. So we actually had a day where it was level 3, which is high risk for sensitive groups and poor air quality is possible. It was those really hot days a couple weeks ago. And so we actually canceled outdoor activities. We, had the kids stay hydrated, had the air conditioners on. So this is another thing that we're paying really close attention to when it's really hot. We want to make sure that our students and staff are safe. So there's a lot there. And that is.
Can I just state something?
Yeah.
So this information has been put out for years now, right? And the main concern that we have is that the information isn't getting to the right people. We put it out there, we provide presentations, we provide information, but it still seems that every year we have so many people popping up and going, I didn't know this is going on, right? So I feel like it would be great as a call to action to ask our residents to help share this information, to ask those questions to the parents if you ever come across them. Are you aware what happens if there is an evacuation here? To start those conversations so they start thinking about it and reaching for the information. Because sometimes, either they're too busy or they're thinking of wildfire preparedness maybe in their home, and they're not even thinking about what's going on with their child at school. So I plead to you to help us share the message.
Thank you for that.
Yes, Selena, I think this remains my,
Yeah.
just a huge concern. I mentioned this to some parents in the spring.
Thank you.
And I think most people are shocked.
Yeah.
And this was a doctor. He's like, no, he's like, I'm going to get my kid. And a posse of us will. And this is, I don't think this is an abnormal response. And I think it takes only a small number of people not complying and trying to pick up their kids to completely clog the evacuation routes and cause just a lot of loss of life.
Yeah.
So I think dwelling and just starting to you know, we're basically getting through this fire season, but not losing our momentum and saying like, you know, what do we need to do to get this message out? But I think in addition to getting it out, there's just a lot more answering of the difficult questions. Like, you know, are there even seeing this today, there's, you know, I can ask 20 hard questions, and I've been wrestling with you know, with this for now coming on 2 years. And so I think it's time to get this out. And you know, you mentioned sending this out or posting the video last year, but it didn't get posted. And all of us get busy, but then this is so important. And I think we need to take this information, because there's so much good information, there's so much goodwill, everyone realizes this is so important, but it's a really difficult intersection of a lot of things and a lot of responsibilities between the school district, between the fire district, between the town and the town government, and between the citizens and the parents. We're really at this nexus of all of these sort of authorities and responsible parties. And I still remain very, very, very concerned that there's missing part, and it is such a difficult area. So let's figure out what we can do to and like something I thought was like an acknowledgement of all the parents, right? Like what if every parent, you know, before their kid arrives on the first day of school, they have to sign this form and fill it out electronically that says, I understand that given the dire situation of our evacuation routes and the location of the schools, it's been determined by the authorities the safest procedure under certain circumstances of an evacuation order are to shelter in place, which means you have to leave town immediately and you cannot pick up your child. This is and have, you know, you are so good at sharing this and explaining it, but we need to scale that.
Yeah.
And then make sure essentially every parent and everyone who has that reaction of, I'm going to get my kid to pick up, that they wrestle with that. They get a chance to ask all of their hard questions, and we have the mechanism to answer them, to provide all the answers that y'all do have. It's just we need to get them out and just really face this difficult issue. And
Thanks, Randy, for bringing that up, because it's not just the school, right? We battle with this with residents district-wide with information that is crucial for people to be aware of. I mean, as simple as a new ordinance that we adopted. We sent out mass mailings. I have done tons of workshops. I have done presentations. And that's only reaches, you know, like 30% of our population, our district, which is amazing. And we advertise it, we put it out. It's the same thing what the school does. And one of the biggest issues is it's either people just either don't want to know or don't realize that there's something else they need to know about. And it's trying to figure out how to bridge that communication with all the people we're not reaching. I mean, an idea I just had as you were talking was because of that challenge is possibly where the fire department, I mean, I don't want to put more of a workload on us, but it might be a simple thing of having either this kind of packet or even a QR code, because we are hitting every single house in our fire district, every single house. And a lot of them are parents. And it's maybe something where we can put a little word in of saying, hey, do your kids go to school here in the district? Are you aware of these? You know, just a plug, just to get parents to kind of like a light bulb coming on of thinking. I mean, it is something we can try and do. We can also, which occurred to me also, they every single homeowner gets a report of our home assessment. We have on the last page a page of resources of information, but this is something that we can certainly add to there. And I think, because you always got to capture people's attentions. Did you know that during a wildfire, you cannot pick up your child if they're under evacuation order? I mean, like, honestly, it's like you have to put that out there to grab people's attention. The attention grabber is huge. So that's something else that we can also do, because everybody is going to have a report and they have to actually read the report because they do have to comply by law. So that's another way of trying to get communication out that I'm just thinking out loud as you were talking of how else we can grasp people's attention, because it is. We struggle all the time with everything we have done, posting on websites, social media, mailings, everything. And for the number of people we come across and say, oh, I had no idea. It's like, where are you living that you have no idea? I mean, we put this information out. Roberta's been doing a present, like this happens a lot. So I think it's just getting people to kind of wake up. This is a reality, and we're not, just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean it's not. And the whole thing is preparing for when it does, because it could be, some people have lived here for 40, 50, 60 years and like, well, nothing's happened. Hey, thank God it hasn't. Doesn't mean it's not. And that's the important thing. And we want to make sure that parents are so prepared with this. So thank you, Randy, for bringing that up.
So we have a question from Ronnie. Can you unmute?
Oh, yeah. I guess my reaction is I just think there's no chance that parents will leave without their kids. It just seems unrealistic to me. I mean, I just think you just need to prepare for that not to work.
I think parents. Well, with that, and I totally sympathize, and I hear what you're saying, but I think the reality is parents are going to have to prepare for that, because they won't be allowed in. The sheriff's already set up, roadblocks will be done, they're not getting through. And unfortunately, that's going to be the reality. I know I wouldn't want to leave anywhere without my kids. I wouldn't feel safe not having them, but there comes a point where the risk and the safety comes first. And for us, it's the safety of the child as well as the safety of the other people that are being put at risk. So we hope we never have to come to that. And that's, of course, worst case scenario. And we pray that never happens. But
there's multiple wake-up calls here.
yes.
There's a wake-up call for the authorities that the parents don't know about it, and they largely won't accept it. And if there is an evacuation order during school hours, and there was a tabletop model evacuation, and it happened I think at 8 a.m. And I asked a question at our EPC meeting of, was a shelter in place ordered for the school? Was that all modeled? And it wasn't at all. It wasn't even considered as a part of it. So if there is a wake up call. Yeah, and I think, Ronnie, I mean, you expressed what basically I've only shared that this is the case with about 10 parents, because I've been afraid it's going to blow up. I've been wanting to get ready and get the communication, but here it is a year and a half later, 2 fire seasons.
We're still having this conversation.
And we're still having this conversation.
So, I mean, I want to go to something that Kim said earlier, and Selena, that parents have a responsibility to read what we put out. And I'm not saying that, we shouldn't try harder or try different ways. Like there are so many more things that we can do and should do. But this past month in the newsletter that we sent out in the district, it was really focused on emergency preparedness. And, basically, do you know what we do if there's a wildfire, and trying to get parents' attention. So not to say there's not more we can do, but I also expect parents to read what we put out. And it's frustrating when they don't. So I think we all share that frustration. Are there any other questions?
I was just going to say, I thought there's an interesting situation that happened. It was I think it was the Santa Monica or the Malibu fires, where Pepperdine had to shelter in place. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that.
No.
But they did have to shelter in place at the school, and I have children down there, so I was worried about it. So I was watching it on Twitter, and you had mentioned that was a defensible place. It was a terminology you used.
For structure protection?
Yes, and they had the National Guard, they had helicopters come in. They really kept that, fire from hitting that school. So I was frightened for those poor kids that were sheltering there. But it was amazing to see how they were able to control it and keep it from hitting that school in the shelter. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that there are different level resources that are available in more urban areas, like east of 280 versus what's available west of 280. But given our school situation, I mean, imagine the national tragedy just imagine a room, building full of hundreds of children. I mean, it would be international news.
Oh yeah.
And so how can we start really really examining this because it's an unusual situation. I mean, when I first heard about this, I did research to see if there were any other jurisdictions in wildfire area prone areas in Colorado, et cetera, that have documented shelter-in-place policies under evacuation order for schools, and I couldn't find any. Although there have been schools that have sheltered in place during wildfire, like Paradise Fire, and they survived. But here we're planning for it, and so what are we going to do given that we're planning for it? We need to do, I think, a whole additional levels of planning.
I mean, the planning is progressive, right? And it's situational, and the plan is not to get to that point. So that's why we have all of the pieces in place before we even, have to do that. And that would be the least desirable.
I mean, experts tell me that if a fire strikes here, high wind can go through Cocoa Valley in 2 hours. And that's,
Yeah, we'll have to revisit that. I'll have to see that because I haven't seen the 2 hours in the fire modeling we've done.
Yeah.
So that will have to be evaluated because I have done a lot of fire modeling and I haven't seen it come through in 2 hours.
But with technology, with communication technology, if there's a fire anywhere around, we can plan enough for.
Oh yeah, I don't think you can ever plan enough.
Yeah.
That's my motto. So with that, I wanted to thank you all for being here this evening in the room and at home. Thank you for joining us. And thank you so much to Kim and Selena for being here and for being such great partners with the school district. We really appreciate all you do to keep us safe. Thank you.